Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Dodgers Dawgs as part of the Dodgers Daily Network. My name is Austin Brubaker. I will be your host this evening and we'll be talking some more about Dodgers baseball, where this team is at, particularly on the pitching side today. That's going to be the ultra focus of today's episode. We're going to be talking about where the Los Angeles Dodgers are with their pitching staff as far as the successes that they've had, where the actual roster is at, who potentially we could be expecting back. And this is really important because today is June 30th, 2025. Which means tomorrow will be the first day in the month of July, and quickly approaching us is the trade deadline. So what we're going to do today in this show, and we're going to have a little bit of interaction with you guys, but I'm going to primarily focus a lot because I've done a lot of prep, a lot of research going into today's show. So today should be a bit of a fun show. We're going to be talking about the state of where the Dodgers are at right now, where they are pitching-wise in particular. We might get into position player-wise on a little bit of a different show, but that's not quite as interesting as the pitching element is. We'll be talking the state of the Los Angeles Dodgers, the state of Major League Baseball, where other teams are at, and then start to look at who potential options should be. I want to preface this show with a couple of different things. One, this is not a definitive Dodgers definitely need to make this move, nor will this show be a proposed different trade packages for each individual player. What this show is designed to do is to give a realistic outlook as to where the Dodgers are at on their pitching side, as well as talk about potentially different realistic options that could be available if different things take place. We'll be talking a little bit about that. We'll be diving deep into that, as well as diving deep into some of the numbers for these players, because I think it is there's a lot of players that you can mention. There's a lot of names that you can kind of throw out there. Okay, let's look at the actual situation of what those players are at as far as contract-wise. Let's talk about their actual successes this season to see if they could potentially be a realistic fit for the Los Angeles Dodgers. That's kind of the course of what we have. I actually have a new spreadsheet. I know, super exciting, but I think it actually is going to be something that's going to be really useful for you guys with updated numbers on potential targets that the Dodgers could actually get on the pitching side. So we'll be diving into that, but I want to know what your guys' thoughts down in the comment section are. Today's going to be a really fun, I think, insightful show that we can kind of dive into. It also is a very exciting week for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Obviously, day off today, but tomorrow they start their series against the Chicago White Sox, and on Wednesday should be the day that Clayton Kershaw is going out there and pitching and potentially going after 3,000 strikeouts. If that doesn't get you fired up, knowing what he has meant to the organization and knowing that you are watching one of the best pitchers of his era, one of the best pitchers of all time going out there and pitching for 3,000 strikeouts, just unbelievable. I'm so excited about that. Just recapping briefly of what we saw during the series with the Royals. Obviously, disappointing game on Saturday, but that was quick. We were able to quickly rebound, the Dodgers were, and go out and win the game on Sunday. Shout out to Justin Robleski. He pitched amazing, and that is just briefly a bit of the version of Justin Robleski that absolutely is and always was in there. Justin Robleski has an insane amount of talent and a lot of fight, and especially when you put him in those big time moments and you allow him the opportunity to be able to grow and develop, he's going to be able to go out there and shine. So I was super excited for that. Good to see some of you in the chat. CNAV, Kristen Navarro, hey, happy Monday. Austin and Dodgers Dogs, interested in the topic as far as the IL pitchers are from returning. I don't have necessarily a ton of information as far as when exactly those guys will be returning, because as we'll dive into it in just a second, the path that the Dodgers go down in the trade deadline is going to be entirely dependent as far as what they're going to do at the trade deadline. Justin Lamas, thank you very much for joining us. Hey, mate, what's up? Glad we took the Colorado series seriously. Now we're up 33 and a half games ahead of them. That's absolutely right. Always happy to be ahead of division rivals. Robo was awesome yesterday. It says CNAV. Yeah, so feel free throughout the course of the show It might take me a little bit to be able to get to some of the comments, but feel free to interact with the comment section as far as what are your particular thoughts on each one of these different topics. We might break it down section by section, talk a little bit about the Dodgers, get back into the comments, then we might dive into the section of talking about where teams are at in Major League Baseball, and then start talking about the different needs before readdressing the comment section. That actually is kind of how I'm going to break it down a little bit for the show today. But to start it off, let's go ahead and do a little bit of an overview as far as the Dodgers and their Major League roster. We're going to look at FanGraphs first. We're going to look at all the different pitchers that are on the roster. And then we're going to cut over and use one of the spreadsheets that I've been using in recent weeks, talking about the actual statistical output for some of these pitchers as well. So this is FanGraphs right here, one of those resources that I use all the time. You can see we have for the starting pitchers, there are the pitchers that are part of the equation for the Dodgers: Yamamoto, Kershaw, Dustin May, Shohei Ohtani, and Justin Robleski. They have slotted into more of a starter role. They have Scott, Yates, Vesia, Kopech, Dreyer, Banda, Lou Trevino still on the roster. Noah Davis just recently got added to the roster in replace of Luis Garcia. Luis Garcia did not have any minor league options. He was designated for assignment. And what you're actually going to see down below is there's a lot of guys that have minor league options that are part of this 40-man roster. That is not by accident. That is very much intentional. And Noah Davis is playing a role in that and doing something that a Luis Garcia couldn't really do, which could lead into question as far as the extended future for a guy like Lou Trevino. And then Ben Kasparius is part of this mix as well. On the injured list, you have a Tyler Glasnow who is rehabbing right now in Oklahoma City. Last appearance didn't go necessarily well for him, but he's still rehabbing. Tony Gonsolin, haven't really heard from him in a while. Kyle Hurt, potentially maybe towards the end of the year. River Ryan, haven't heard much. Roki Sasaki is kind of a question mark also. Blake Snell, we'll see. It is very much a hope for the Los Angeles Dodgers that he's going to be back sooner than later. And he and Tyler Glasnow are perhaps the two, very much are, the two key players as far as what the Dodgers could potentially do at the trade deadline, because these are the guys that are going to be relied upon as aces during the postseason. So getting them back healthy, if they believe that they're going to come back healthy, might limit what they do at the trade deadline. Gavin Stone, haven't heard much from him. I wouldn't really expect a whole lot from him, not from any inside information, but just based on the fact of when his shoulder surgery was. Brusdar Graterol hopefully will be coming back. Michael Grove, I believe, will be missing this season. Evan Phillips, I believe, will be out this season. And then hopefully Blake Treinen will be back. These are the injured pitchers right now. None of these guys are currently on the 40-man roster. They're all, I believe, on the 60-day injured list, which means anytime these guys come back and are healthy, you're going to have to remove somebody from the 40-man roster. Thus, one of the main reasons why Luis Garcia was removed from the 40-man roster was because he didn't have any minor league options, and they wanted to have a spot that could be a little bit more of an up-down, and instead of having for example, a Jack Dreyer, who we might talk about a little bit later, can go up and down and use that spot to get fresh arms in there. They decided to go ahead and free up the roster spot and still keep that up-down option for there, which is currently being held by Noah Davis. Which, if we look at the AAA roster, there is a lot of options of which the Dodgers can send up and down. You have Nick Frasso, Emmett Sheehan, who was absolutely incredible during his last start in Oklahoma City. Is the reigning, just awarded today, Pacific Coast League Pitcher of the Week. Congratulations to Emmett Sheehan. 6 perfect innings with 13 strikeouts will do that for you. Landon Neck is still down at the minor league level, as is Bobby Miller. Additional pitching depth at the starting pitcher position, as well as Matt Sauer, who I believe can be brought up and then optioned back down one more time. Edgardo Henriquez was just recently activated from the 60-day injured list. He might be part of that up-down train at some point throughout the year, as well as Alexis Diaz, the former closer from Cincinnati. Will Klein, who had some success for Los Angeles can be optioned down, so he's down in Oklahoma City. Jack Little, who made his major league debut, similar thing. And then Zach Penrod, who they actually got from Boston, who I believe Penrod was recently designated for assignment. He's part of AAA Oklahoma City as well. So these are there. What you're going to notice is there's a lot of different arms that can be moved up and down right now, which is in part what this Noah Davis roster spot is. They want to keep arms as healthy as possible. I'm going to cut it back over to me right now, and then we're going to transition over to something else in just a minute. So you have a lot of really talented guys, particularly in the bullpen. You have Scott, Yates, Vesia, Kopech. Those are the main arms that you have at the back end of your bullpen. You do have a Jack Dreyer who's pitching really well, closed out the game on Sunday. You also have a Ben Kasparius who can fill in that role. But you have a lot of different guys that can be part of that equation in the mix, as well as you have a lot of different starting pitchers as well that can kind of fill in. But a lot of those guys, there's question marks as far as the health of these pitchers. And this is so incredibly important for the Los Angeles Dodgers, is you have to have enough arms that are able to go out there, be fresh, and be effective during the postseason. The goal of the Los Angeles Dodgers is not necessarily to win the National League West, although that certainly is a goal of theirs. Their main overarching goal, however, is to win a World Series, to win a postseason game. Everybody knows that, or at least Dodgers fans know and expect that from the Los Angeles Dodgers. So the goal is not to necessarily to win National League West, but is to go out and win, 11 postseason games, or however many postseason games that you're needed now, assuming that the Dodgers get some sort of bye. And in a postseason series type setting, you really need 4 starting pitchers. That would at least be ideal. And then I believe you can have 9 relief pitcher arms, or some teams have 14 position players and 12 pitchers as part of their postseason roster. Either way, there's a lot of pitchers that are going to need to be part of this mix. And this is especially apparent because the Dodgers pitching as a whole hasn't necessarily been the greatest this season. We're going to cut back over to here to the spreadsheet that I've been showing quite a bit through the course of this year, and I think this is really important. Basically, if you aren't familiar with this, which there is an added element that I did for these arms right here, percentage of 2024 innings pitched, that'll come up in just a little bit. We have different ERA estimators, as well as other statistics that I thought were relevant: strikeout percentage, walk percentage, and ground ball percentage. And what I wanted to do is, in a colorful way, be able to depict where the Dodgers pitchers are at. Remember, blue is not good, red is really solid. And you can see, basically, from this point up, you can kind of include Ben Kasparius, although he struggled a little bit more during the starting pitcher role, are the starters for the Dodgers. And you can see that there's been quite a bit of struggle. Yamamoto has been fine. I would feel totally comfortable with him starting a postseason game. Dustin May has really struggled as of late. And you can see this not just with his ERA, which is at 4.68, but with the other estimators as well. The best one for him being xFIP, expected fielding independent pitching, which only sits at a 4.30. And if you look at Dustin May's StatCast page, things don't really stand out great for him. So it remains very much a question mark whether the Dodgers would feel comfortable giving Dustin May the ball during a postseason series. I think there's still a lot more to be proven for him. Remember, Dustin May is on the last year of his contract, and he has not pitched at all. He did not pitch at all in 2024. Very limited innings in 2023. Already at 82 2/3 innings, so well above what he was pitched before. Clayton Kershaw, been much, much better as of late. I think we still want to see where things are at going forward, but if he continues down this path, he could potentially be an option during a postseason type series. We are still waiting on Blake Snell and Tyler Glasnow. Obviously, these numbers do not reflect how good they actually are, but if they are able to be effective pitchers, that would be a really big step, as well as with Emmett Sheehan and Shohei Ohtani. So, for the Dodgers, if you have Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who's able to go out there and remain healthy, which he's almost at the amount of innings that he pitched last year. So that's something to keep in mind. Remember, Yamamoto got injured last year halfway through and missed some significant time. These innings pitched do not include postseason innings, so there's a little bit more that Yamamoto had. If you have Yoshi Yamamoto, if you had Blake Snell and Tyler Glasnow come back healthy, which is no guarantee at all, and then you had Shohei Ohtani, Emmett Sheehan, and Clayton Kershaw, I think the Dodgers would feel relatively comfortable with that. And by relatively comfortable, you have four, you could say, legit aces if you include Ohtani, Snell, Glasnow, and Yamamoto. You have a potential emergence of an Emmett Sheehan, and then you have somebody who is one of the best pitchers in franchise history in Clayton Kershaw. A lot of great arms right there. But the question mark for the Dodgers right now is you don't know exactly what to expect. Most recent rehab appearance for Tyler Glasnow did not necessarily go well. He gave up, I believe, 5 runs during that appearance. There was a couple of strikeouts, didn't really give up a whole lot of walks, but still, you want to continue to see progress for him to remain comfortable, and we're just a month away from the Dodgers having to make decisions as far as what they're going to do for their pitching side. When we get to the bullpen, and this is the bullpen look right here. Remember, Evan Phillips out for the season. They will be without him. Blake Trinan also injured, but with some of the other arms, you can see a lot more success for a lot of these guys. Ben Kasparius, notwithstanding the most recent outing that did not go his way, is a very, very talented pitcher, and you can see by a lot of the different numbers right here. Jack Dreyer also has been absolutely phenomenal. If you average all the ERA estimators, it's a 3.12 for Jack Dreyer in his rookie season. Just phenomenal for him. Tanner Scott has been really good as well. You can see with Tanner Scott, what is amazing about him is his walk percentage is only at 4%. Strikeout minus walk rate is absolutely phenomenal. Anthony Banda, there's some underlying metrics that don't necessarily like Anthony Banda quite as much, particularly with the lower strikeout percentage and high walk percentage, but I think he's been better as of late, so I think the Dodgers keep him around as long as they can. Yeah, Bessia, Yates, you have Kopech as well that are all doing really well, as well as Justin Robleski has been doing well. However, if we look at the overall pitching staff, and this is the reason why I decided to create this, is not just to visualize everything together, but was to also look to see the different ranks for the Dodgers and their pitching. And remember, these different estimates are just averages. I didn't go through and put the actual value. I put the estimated value, so these might just be slightly off, but the actual ranking for this section is actually absolutely correct. The Dodgers ranked 23rd in ERA. That is not up to par for the Los Angeles Dodgers. 21st if we're talking about FIP, 15th expected FIP, 13th in Sierra. It's an 8th in strikeout percentage, which isn't bad, but a lot of these numbers are not exactly where you like it. Which, to be fair, if we were to rank the ideal postseason options, which we talked about before are the blue options up here, the Dodgers rank much better, 3.62 ERA for the ideal options that the Dodgers would ideally have for a postseason. That's 8th, it's 15th in FIP, it's 7th and 3 with expected FIP, 8th in Sierra. Remember, this is a totally unfair exercise because it does not remove any other pitchers from the other organizations, but this shows you that the Dodgers pitching outlook might look a little bit better, and a lot of the struggle has either come from some of these options right here, which they did not expect to need contributions for them, or rather they expected to need these contributions, but they're not expected to be postseason options for them, and from the minor league depth that we can see right here, ERA of 6.63 and 5.22 respectively around that mark. So where are the Dodgers at? Let's do a broad scale overview of where the pitching is at. I think for a lot of Dodgers fans, there is a lot of uncomfortability for the Dodgers and the health of their pitchers, particularly on the starting pitching staff, but also with the relief pitchers as well. If we cut back over here and we look at this is the reason why I decided to add this element right here is because I wanted to look at percentage of innings pitched in 2024. Ben Kasparius is already at 58.4% of the innings pitched that he pitched last year. Typically, with pitchers, you might be able to build them up a little past it, but I don't know how much further past the previous year's innings that you can go aside from some sort of injury taking place. For example, Clayton Kershaw, I'm not too worried about him because he was injured for a lot of last year and only pitched 30 innings last year. But for a player like a Jack Dreyer, I think I kind of alluded to this on the show on Saturday with Casey. Jack Dreyer's already at about 73% of the innings that he had pitched during the 2024 season. So as the season draws along for a Jack Dreyer, you might want to watch a little bit of his workload, which I think could be part of the reason why we might not be seeing quite as much Jack Dreyer right now as we had seen during the early parts of the season. Tanner Scott is at 54%, same with Anthony Banda. Alex Vesia is about 51%, and we're about 51% of the way through the season. So a lot of these are pretty much in line, except for a Ben Kasparius and Jack Dreyer, who are getting a pretty heavy workload for both of them. So we want to keep that in mind. The workload that a lot of these bullpen arms are getting in comparison to last year, as well as the health of these arms. That is something that we don't necessarily know who actually needs rest and what is going to be best for each one of these guys. A couple big takeaways. One, the actual overall pitching staff ERA for the Dodgers, I don't think is acceptable. 23rd in Major League Baseball is not the mark that the Dodgers want to be at, nor is the mark quite there for the expectation that the Dodgers have, which is to go back and win the World Series. You can hope that the offense can go out there and score a lot of runs, but if they pitch like they have over the overall scope of the season, I don't know if that's going to necessarily be enough for the Dodgers, even with the amount of talent that they have. Granted, the ERA for the pitchers that are ideal options for the Dodgers is significantly better. But there's always room to be able to go out there and add more, especially in this mix with the Dodgers where they want to make sure that they have as many healthy arms as possible. There's a couple of different paths that the Dodgers could go down. And I don't think that this year in particular, at least as of right now, as of June 30th, before we have a lot of news on Tyler Glasnow and Blake Snell, which as additional information comes out, my opinion might change. I don't believe right now the Dodgers are intent on making any sort of blockbuster type trade. Meaning that I believe the Dodgers were intentional about the decisions that they made during the course of the offseason and spent the amount of money that they did through the course of the offseason to go out there and try to make the team have as much depth as possible so they would not have to go out there and make some sort of desperate move at the trade deadline. I believe they were very intentional about the decisions that they made, and I believe they want to do everything in their power to prevent going down that path if they don't have to go down that path. Meaning that if they believe the arms are going to come back healthy and they like the progress that these guys have, I believe that the Dodgers can win a World Series with Tyler Glasnow and Blake Snell and Yoshi Yamamoto and Shohei Ohtani being in the mix. You throw in an Emmett Sheehan and the other arms that are part of this bullpen. I believe that the Dodgers, and I think they know that they can go out there and win a World Series. So I don't think that they're going to be necessarily desperate to go out there and make some type of moves immediately. Nor do I think that the Dodgers as an organization right now, knowing that they, because of the decisions that they make during free agency, are limited in the amount of options that they can do as far as where they draft and the amount of money that they're able to spend in certain areas to get and develop talent. I believe they're going to be somewhat cautious because I think the track record for the organization shows. I think they're going to be somewhat cautious, especially with the younger guys in the system, to be trading a lot of those guys in the system, at least as of right now. Now, additional news to what is going on with Tyler Glasnow and Blake Snell very much could change this equation. Nor is this a saying that the Dodgers will do nothing at the trade deadline. I fully expect, with the situation where the pitching is at, and understanding that it takes a lot for you to go out there and win a World Series, and you want to make this team as foolproof as possible, will be making some sort of decisions and be adding talent, particularly to the pitching side, to add as much depth as they possibly can be. Might be a little bit tricky, just when we talk about the different arms and stuff. Could come in the form of Lou Trevino's role, or Noah Davis's role, or some of these other different roles that could pop up throughout the course of the season where it's at. But I kind of want to know your guys' thoughts before we dive into the state of Major League Baseball. And remember, we're going to get into an actual target list, and we're going to go deep into some of the players that potentially could be available pitching wise. I kind of want to know some of your thoughts right now. We'll be diving into a couple of the comments right here. Let's go. CNAV, I bought tickets for tomorrow's game thinking it was Kershaw Day. It's Yamamoto's day. Yeah, tomorrow is Yoshi Yamamoto's day. Wednesday, I believe, is Clayton Kershaw's game. Justin Lummis, boldest prediction in terms of the biggest name being traded at the trade deadline. I'll go Mackenzie Gore, because saying Alcantara and Keller getting traded at the trade line isn't that bold. Many have predicted it to happen. I don't really have a bold trade right now. A lot of the trade options that I'll be showcasing in just a couple minutes, are going to be very realistic options for the Dodgers in particular to potentially go out and, depending on the success of that particular team, go out there and potentially get. Justin Lamas feel like dudes like Penrod, Baroa are the last guys on the 40-man roster. They can easily be DFA'd and claimed on waivers by another team who can option them. Potentially. We'll see what happens with the roster decisions. Certainly there's going to be additional decisions that the Dodgers are going to have to make. With the arms, there is intentionality with keeping a lot of arms on the 40-man roster that can be optioned and come up and down, because there's an expressed goal by the Dodgers to be able to use Oklahoma City as much as they can as a bit of an express up and down to keep the arms and the rest of the pitching staff as healthy as possible. Even though Luis Garcia just got DFA'd, he played a crucial role this year because he took 27 innings away, 27 and a third innings away from some of the other bullpen arms and prevented them from being taxed more, which means that they might be a little bit fresher during the course of the postseason. Lou Trevino right now is pitching almost 20 innings, playing an absolutely crucial role for the Dodgers and preventing them from going out there and giving additional innings to some of the other guys on the pitching staff. And I think that up-down type of options that the Dodgers can have allows them to prevent them from forcing Luis Garcia on the major league roster and making a decision elsewhere, or eventually with a Lou Trevino, unless the Dodgers decide to keep him around for quite a bit. It would allow you to be able to keep arms as fresh as possible and continue to go through guys like a Noah Davis or Will Klein or some of the other guys that the Dodgers have brought in who played key roles during the course of the season. Even if at the end of the season, ERA might not always look pretty, they might only get a handful of innings, but all of those innings stack up and keep the rest of the arms healthy as possible. Let's see. CNAB, does Banda have any options left? I know he's a journeyman. He does not, which Anthony Banda is a key name to be able to keep in mind. We'll see what exactly happens with him going forward. Let's see. Alex, thank you very much for joining us. Biggest need is starting pitcher, and there are not many quality arms out there. We'll get to that in just a second, because it is very much a seller's market this year. And let's go ahead and cut over. Let's actually look at the standings across Major League Baseball, because I think we need a little bit of a rewind or a little bit of a look to see where things are at across Major League Baseball. This might be a little bit small for you guys. Here, let me see if I can go ahead and zoom in a little bit right here. Nah, it's not letting me zoom in, so we'll go ahead and cut it over. I apologize for this being small. So if we're looking at potential teams that could be sellers, and this is not exact because it is July 31st, it is June 30th, and the trade deadline is not towards the end of next month, which means none of these teams have fully made up their decision quite yet. You have the Arizona Diamondbacks kind of hovering around 500. Colorado Rockies are 19-65, 33, as Justin Lama said, 33 and a half games, sneaking up towards the top of the standings for the Dodgers. You have the Atlanta Braves, who are very much a question mark this year. They are 7 games under 500. Miami's only half game behind Atlanta. They are 8 games under 500. You have the Washington Nationals. They are 14 games under 500. They should be sellers, as well as Miami will probably be sellers. Atlanta is very much a question mark. The National League Central is incredibly fascinating to me because you have 4 teams that are above 500. Kind of similar a little bit, you could say, perhaps to the American League Central last year when you had a lot of teams that were kind of hovering a little bit above 500 and ended up 3 teams made it to the postseason in the American League Central last year. I'm not necessarily expecting that at all from the National League Central, but you have a lot of teams that are kind of creeping up there. One of the teams that I have my eyes on, and this is for potential targets, is St. Louis. They're currently 9 games above 500, so I think it's the possibility of them being any sort of sellers is quickly depleting at the moment. Same thing with Cincinnati, who's 4 games above 500. So keep an eye out on both of these teams. Milwaukee has been at the top of the National League Central for quite a while, and then Chicago's at the top of the Central. Pittsburgh is 15 games under 500. You look at the American League, and you have Toronto, who is 7 games above 500. They are looking like they are going to be potentially competing. Boston is 3 games under 500, and Baltimore is 11 games under 500. They very much look like some team that could potentially be looking for some type of reset during the course of this trade deadline. In the American League Central, it's the Detroit Tigers at the top, and every other team is below 500. A lot of teams are kind of hovering around 500, though, and you don't know what exactly they're going to do. Chicago White Sox, a little bit better season than last year, but that's not really saying a whole lot. 28-56 for them. And then in the AL West, Houston is up on top by 6.5 games. Seattle's a little bit over 500. The Angels are only 1 game under 500. The Texas Rangers are 2 games under 500, and the Athletics are quite a bit under 500. And what you're going to notice with this is there's a lot of teams that are kind of hovering-ish around 500, or really there's not necessarily a whole lot of teams that are obvious, this is not our year, we're going to go ahead and sell, that have a ton of really good assets. So it becomes a question mark. What are the teams that are actually going to be trading at the trade deadline given this picture? Because this picture that we're seeing right now very much will change over the course of the next couple of months, and will change, or next month or so, not next couple of months, over the next month, as we get closer to the trade deadline, and decisions will have to be made by a lot of these teams that are kind of sitting there around 500. They're going to have to make a determination as far as whether they're going to want to go out there and make a certain trade, or become a seller, or if they're going to go all in and buy, which very much could limit the market for the Dodgers to go out there and make trades. Because if you have a lot of teams that want in on this season and only a handful of teams that are willing to sell, we've seen over the past couple of years the trade market, or the trade value for pitchers, be vastly overvalued, meaning that it takes a lot to go out there and get any sort of pitching, which could lead to the incentive for the Dodgers to kind of hope that the pitchers that they have coming back, which they certainly have the talent within the organization to win a World Series, it only remains a question as far as whether they're going to be healthy. They just have to be opportunistic about taking advantage of opportunities that best present itself. So this leads to a difficult question to answer. Who is available? And I'll be honest, I'm not an MLB insider, so I have no inside information onto any of these names. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to preface this section before we actually dive in, and this is going to be where the fun section is, because then this is where we actually talk about different names coming up, and I believe there is 42 different names I have listed and a lot of numbers on for each one of these guys. For this list, one, there's a couple of things that I want to take note. One, don't take each of these names as I want the Dodgers to go out there and trade for these guys. Even with guys that where I say that I have high interest for, does not mean that I'm saying the Dodgers need to or should go after and trade for this particular pitcher. It is I'm keeping my eye out for this particular guy in an instance where it makes sense and the price point makes sense for the Dodgers. That is what I say when I say my interest is high or it's moderate. Kind of am looking at it. We'll see exactly what's going on. Number 2, not all of these guys will be dealt. In fact, I would actually be surprised if half of these guys are dealt at the trade deadline. But for each one of these guys, they are on some type of team that is either likely to be sellers or number 2, in a little bit of we'll see exactly what happens. There's a couple of teams on here, particularly with I think of teams like Arizona or Atlanta or Boston or St. Louis or Arizona or Cincinnati, teams like that in which they have players on here. One, this is not saying that they will be sellers at the trade deadline, but if things turn in a sidewards direction, meaning they go and lose 10 in a row, perhaps it would make sense to be able to move off of some of these guys. That's what I'm saying when I'm saying that. Not all of the teams that are listed on here will be sellers at the trade deadline, nor will a lot of these guys actually be moved. What I'm looking at with this particular list is guys that either have very limited amount of team control, meaning they're going to be free agents at the end of this season or within the next season or two. Either that or they're under larger contracts that other teams might want to potentially get rid of in order to make some type of trade. One thing to note with the Dodgers is with the pitching that they have right now, which actually I'm going to go, before we go ahead and do that, I want to, because I think it's really important, I want to remind everybody of the pitchers that they currently have on the injured list. When it comes to next season, you have a lot of these guys that are going to have to fit onto the 40-man roster and are guys that you want to be in some type of mix that should be coming back at some point next season, if not this season. For guys like Gavin Stone, who was absolutely phenomenal for the Dodgers in 2024 before he got injured, he very much is going to be in the mix. River Ryan was phenomenal. Kyle Hurt was phenomenal. You have obviously Glasnow and Blake Snell. Tony Gonsolin, I believe, will still be under contract for the Dodgers. We'll see exactly what happens with him. Roki Sasaki, they want to keep him in the mix. You have Blake Trinan. You have a Brusdar Graterol, who is a part of the mix. You have a Michael Grove, who provides a lot of good depth for the team. They have a lot of arms that will be coming back next season or potentially coming back next season, which means you might not exactly want the guys that are going to be or going to have a ton of years of team control if it doesn't fit into the mix. And also remember that the Dodgers spend a lot of money on this team, which means that, one, they probably won't be afraid to spend money, but also it might not be exactly their top priority to go out and get these giant contracts. They might like for a little bit more of that shorter term deals, especially if they're expecting Shohei, Tyler Glasnow, Blake Snell, and Yamamoto at the very least, as well as a combination of Emmett Sheehan, Gavin Stone, River Ryan, Justin Robleski, Ben Kasparis, all these different young guys to be able to fit into the rotation as well. They might not necessarily want guys with lots of years control, but if guys don't come back healthy, these could potentially be different options that the team turns to. So, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and turn over to the spreadsheet. Again, all of these players, or not all of these players, will be available or will be traded, but these are names to keep an eye on if you are the Los Angeles Dodgers. And it's going to be broken down by starting pitchers, and then right-handed relievers, and then left-handed relievers, and then we'll dive into each of the numbers and talk about where some of my interest could be, and that could lead to potentially some good conversations. This is the very start of this talk, and this will have to be updated and looked at throughout the course of the trade deadline season. So we're going to cut over to this Excel sheet right here. What you're going to see right here is a bunch of starting pitchers that are on either teams that are kind of falling out of the race or in a little bit of a limbo for the Dodgers. And how I have it sorted right here is kind of my interest for them, but it's not exactly interest in far as I would go out and trade for this guy first immediately. It's if the situation presented itself, for example, the top two guys that are top of the list right here, in which that I would have high interest in the case that Tyler Glasnow and Blake Snell probably aren't going to come back healthy, which we have no idea if they are or aren't. And Chris Sale, just keep in mind, is injured right now. It's Chris Sale and potentially a Chris Bubich, who has 2 years of control left for Kansas City. If Kansas City decided if they wanted to go down some sort of selling route, that could potentially be an option where the Dodgers could overpay for that type of pitcher and get a high upside type of arm. You also have a lot of different arms that are part of this mix, kind of this moderate type mix. Merrill Kelly, Michael Soroka, who actually, if he is probably one of the names that isn't talked about enough, but potentially could have some upside to him. You have a potential reunion with Walker Buehler. You have Charlie Morton. I also have Charlie Morton's numbers since May 10th because they're vastly different than Charlie Morton's overall numbers. You have Sandy Alcantara, who gets a lot of talk with the Dodgers. There's a Sonny Gray, who I'm not anticipating being available. But again, if St. Louis falls out in the mix and you need to go out there and overpay for a starter or take on that contract, there's a lot of money that needs to be paid to an aging Sonny Gray. That could potentially be an emergency option. Pablo Lopez is injured. Don't know exactly when he's going to come back, but he could have been an option. Tyler Mahle, Chris Bassett, I'm thinking about potentially removing him with where Toronto is at. He's doing well, but 1 year of control left. There is a Seth Lugo. We'll dive into some of his numbers. Zach Gallen, Zach Eflin, Tyler Anderson, Nick Martinez, Andrew Heaney. All of these guys are potentially guys that could be available with shorter term deals, either 1 year or just a handful of years, but with more expensive contracts to them that the Dodgers could at some point potentially turn to if they decided to go down some sort of trade route with a pitcher. This does not include a lot of guys that have lots of years club control or are some of the high-end, super upside fancy ones. For example, I don't think it's worthwhile to talk about trading for Paul Skeens because he's not going to be traded at the trade deadline. Or some of the other guys that are a little bit more upscale. I don't necessarily know that they are going to be available at the trade deadline, so I don't necessarily want to look at them too much. And what I did with this is I didn't just talk about the value of which each one of these guys have, talk about the trade availability, the years of control, the age. I also went through and got a lot of different numbers on each one of these guys. Now, this took a very long time because all of this stuff, I don't have access to the databases, which means this has to be manually pulled, which means I won't update this daily. This might be a update for my Monday shows, and that's pretty much it. What I have is different estimator or different things to look at for each one of these guys, and there's a reason why I value some guys or over some other guys as potential options for the Dodgers. We have the ERA estimators. These are the ones that we're looking at. ERA, expected ERA, FIP, expected FIP, and Sierra, as well as the average of all of those numbers together. We have that for each one of the starting pitchers as well as the relief pitchers. We have the relative swing and miss stuff. So we have chase percentage, how much they're able to generate swing and miss outside the zone. Whip percentage, ability to get swings and misses. Strikeout percentage, walk percentage, swing and strike percentage. The number of swing and misses that they're able to get on a per pitch basis. Called strike plus swinging strike percentage as well. Fastball velo, and then overall stuff plus, which can be a little bit messy. There's some pitches in which stuff plus is better for than others. so it can get a little bit weird with grading stuff like changeups and stuff. But I just decided to throw that in there as well as contact quality, ground ball percentage that the pitcher generates, the expected batting average. I didn't record actual batting average because I wanted the expected batting average. What is the actual, because I believe it's a little bit more of a predictive value. I got their weighted on-base average, their WOBA, their xWOBA. I did not get their xWOBA con, the XWO Bacon, CNAV's point has stated in the past, and hard hit percentage. I gathered all of these different numbers. A lot of these came from either Fangraphs or Baseball Savant, StatCast. So go check out each one of those. And what you can see with a lot of these is, for some of these pitchers, things haven't necessarily gone well. For example, if we're talking about guys like Zach Allen, really has struggled quite a bit this season, although has put up a lot better numbers in the past. Zach Eflin really has struggled quite a bit in generating swing and miss. He limits the walks that he's able to get, but contact quality isn't necessarily something that's great. Led to a lot of runs for Zach Eflin. Tyler Anderson, Nick Martinez, who actually had a great performance against the San Diego Padres, so maybe keep an eye out for him. But overall, the numbers on the season aren't necessarily standing out-ish if you're looking at all of the different numbers that he's put up. Andrew Heaney, again, not necessarily great or the type of pitcher that you would want starting a game if you were the Los Angeles Dodgers, but potential depth. One name that gets a lot of upside, and it's particular because of his 2.74 ERA, is a guy like a Seth Lugo, who has a 1-year, $15 million deal with the Royals, plus a player option for $15 million next season. If you look at under the hood with a lot of his other estimates, the 4.63 expected ERA, meaning the quality of contact that he generates, the difference between his WOBA and expected WOBA is vastly different. Also gives up hard contact out of all these pitchers at the highest rate. So perhaps there could be some negative regression if you're looking for it. Seth Lugo, who, because of his 2.74 ERA, might get a little bit of a pretty penny. Meaning a lot of prospects might be traded for him, might not necessarily be the greatest investment for him. So let's go at the top. Obviously, Chris Sale, who I'm not really anticipating being traded at the trade deadline at all. If the Dodgers were to overpay for somebody who is the most surefire bet, if he was healthy, he would be the guy. Obviously, his injury throws an entire wrench into it. Why would you trade for an upside, high-end starting pitcher who's injured to add to your other collection of upside, high-end starting pitchers that are injured? Remains a little bit of a question mark. Chris Bubich, who 2 years of club control, probably is not going to be traded by Kansas City, but if they decided to go down this route and trade some of their starting pitching depth, you can see some of the whiff is pretty solid. He did pitch against the Dodgers, so you can kind of make up your own mind of what you think about him. All of the ERA estimators are really solid for him. He would be another really solid addition, left-hander, to the mix. Merrill Kelly got 1 year, $7 million contract for Arizona. If they decided to make a trade, this could be an option that they could trade the 36-year-old Merrill Kelly, 3.50 ERA or 3.50. All of the ERA estimators. You can look at strikeout percentage is solid, walk percentage is decent as well. He's generated some weak contact, 0.280 WOBA. Could potentially be an option. I believe also has some experience during the postseason when the Diamondbacks went on the run. Michael Soroka is a very interesting name that I'm keeping my eye out for because he only has 1 year, $9 million left, 27-year-old, pitching for the Washington Nationals, so very much is going to be available. You look at his expected ERA at 3.05, very much different than his actual ERA of 4.70, which means if you're betting on potential upside going forward or things regressing back to the mean, which if you look at his expected FIP and his Sierra, both of those are really solid, perhaps he could be a potential upside play for the Dodgers. I believe, had a game against LA in which he got, I believe it was 10 strikeouts against them. Strikeouts minus walk percentage is really solid for him. Not necessarily the best swing and miss stuff, but can still generate a lot of strikeouts. You look at his difference between his WOBA and his expected WOBA, it still remains really solid for him. So if you're looking for perhaps that buy low upside option that should definitely be available, Michael Soroka could potentially be the option. Then there becomes some of the other options. Walker Buehler obviously has a history with the Los Angeles Dodgers, and this season has not gone well for Walker Buehler at all. This is only a scenario that I would potentially pursue down if it was very, very cheap for the Dodgers to go out and get him. Not money-wise, but as far as the deal-wise it would take to get Walker Buehler, practically for no real prospect capital, could be something that the Dodgers decide to pursue because of the success Walker Buehler has had in the Dodgers organization. Although, let's be fair with the evaluation process, Walker Buehler, phenomenal in the postseason, and perhaps that's the only criteria that you'd keep in mind. But the regular season last year was not good for Walker Buehler coming back off of injury, and this season has been a little bit more of a continuation of what it was during the regular season last year. So how much do you want to bet on the postseason success of Walker Buehler, live in the nostalgia for the final out of the 2024 World Series? Do you believe that can be replicated again? That's a very good question mark to be able to have. Charlie Morton's another one, pitching for Baltimore. Obviously, aging veteran presence. The only reason why I think he's incredibly noteworthy is if you look at his numbers since May 10th, 2.68 ERA. Other ERA estimators are really solid. A 29% strikeout percentage and a 7.1 walk percentage during that stretch with a decent, healthy amount of ground balls. If you're looking for somebody who has postseason experience at the starting pitcher and you need one of those arms, he very much could be a cheap option for the Dodgers to go down, similar to a Michael Soroka. If you don't want to go down and pay a hefty price for a starting pitcher, he might not be a terrible option for the Dodgers to go down, given his recent success. Did not start out well for him. As you can see, his overall ERA is 5.63. But as of late, since May 10th, 2.68. Sandy Alcantara, very fascinating one. He's another one that I could have broken it down his numbers based off of before the recent stretch and after the recent stretch, even though his most recent appearance did not go particularly well for him. You can look at overall in the season, a 6.98 ERA for Sandy Alcantara. A lot of the underlying ones are in the upper fours, meaning if you average them all out, it's 5.61 ERA. Strikeout percentage is really low for Sandy Alcantara at 17.5%. Not generating a lot of whiffs on the season. Fastball velo very much still is there. And let's remember that Sandy Alcantara did win the Cy Young Award, but he's given up a lot of contact, hard contact. Expected batting average of 280, expected WOBA .354, which is higher than his actual WOBA. So it's a question mark and bet of, do you believe that you can get the best version of Sandy Alcantara, or do you believe that the past couple of weeks prior to the most recent appearance of Sandy Alcantara is the actual version that you're going to get? It is very much a high-risk type of move because I think the price point for Sandy Alcantara is going to be pretty high, even with his 2 years of club control of high value plus one club option. He has 3 years of control, 17.3, 17.3, and 21, which for a starting pitcher type of standpoint with as much upside as he has, actually isn't really that a whole lot for him. He is somebody that I don't really know exactly how to read, and I don't know if the Dodgers, there's a lot of rumors about the Dodgers being interested in him. Be fascinating to see if they actually go down and make that splash for this type of player, especially if it cost a lot for the organization to go out and get a Sandy Alcantara. There's another player like a Tyler Mahle for Texas, I should say. 1 year left on his deal. Kind of indifferent about him. He's got a really low ERA. Some of the other numbers, Sierra, which I think is the best estimator for ERA, much higher than that. You look at his strikeout percentage is low. The walk percentage is a little bit high given his low strikeout percentage. Doesn't get a whole lot of whiffs. You look at his WOBA and expected WOBA. There's a vast difference between the two. So he's another one of those, kind of similar to a Seth Lugo, to where their actual results on the field don't really match the underlying numbers with what they've been able to produce. This right now is just a small list of potentially available arms at the trade deadline. You can see a lot of these guys 1 year of control, or maybe 2 years of control, or if they have multiple years, a little bit more of high value dollar, and those being a little bit more emergency options that the Dodgers could potentially go down in that path. If you're looking for best bargain potential buys that the Dodgers could get, perhaps a Michael Soroka, betting on the upside that he has, perhaps leading into some of the success that Charlie Morton has had as of late. Keep an eye out for Sandy Alcantara, maybe a Merrill Kelly, and then there's some other names that are listed right here. Those are some of the starting pitchers that could potentially be available at the trade deadline. Just looking at the overall, again, want to re-emphasize this for people who are just joining. Not all of these teams will be sellers, and not all of these players will be available. In fact, some of these teams right here might be trading for some of the guys on here because they are actually buyers at the trade deadline. But just wanted to, depending on what happens over the course of the next month, provide a little bit of an insight as far as potential names that could be available at the trade deadline. Perhaps maybe we should have added a little bit, or looking into a little bit more, for example, with Seattle, with them only being 3 games above 500, although I don't necessarily know if they'd be sellers at this point. So those are the starting pitching potential options, which there's not really a ton of names. There's certainly some names that are part of this mix, but there's remains some question mark, for example, with Walker Buehler and Sandy Alcantara having down years this season. Other names not really being available or potentially are injured, like Zach Eflin and Chris Sale. Zach Eflin just recently added today to the injured list. Pablo Lopez has been injured for a little bit as well. Now we're going to go ahead and transition into some of the bullpen arms. And these are just a small collection of some of the right-handed and left-handed bullpen arms that could potentially be available at the trade deadline for the Los Angeles Dodgers. You can see a lot of these similar teams in the mix. First, I'm going to start off with some philosophy that the Dodgers typically have with relief arms, and that is that the Dodgers typically do not overpay for relief arms. I included Yohan Duran and Griffin Jax of the Minnesota Twins on here, but I included them very down on the list. They are both, if you look at some of their numbers, absolutely phenomenal. ERA estimators for both of them are ridiculous. Griffin Jax is one of the best strikeout minus walk percentages in the game. Yohan Duran's got one of the fastest fastballs, some of the best stuff in the game, and does not generate hard contact at all. However, both of those guys, the price point to get both of them is incredibly high. We even saw this with some of the rumors for the Dodgers wanted to go out and get Emmanuel Clase during the trade deadline. It's not something that the Dodgers typically do, is overpay for relievers, which made it very much a shock when the Dodgers actually signed a Tanner Scott to a multi-year deal, is because that is not something that the Dodgers typically do, nor is it something that I'm really expecting them to go out and trade, especially with guys, both of these guys having 3 years of team control left. It's not something that I'm expecting. With relievers, you're looking for guys with either 1 year of control, maybe 2 years of control, but that becomes a little bit more of a question mark as far as whether they're actually going to be traded or not. So I listed a lot of guys that have 1 or maybe 2 years of club control, maybe a club option. You have towards the top of the list, Phil Maton. He's with the Cardinals, probably will not be available, but if you look at his actual numbers, the ERA estimators are all ridiculous. 1.69 ERA, 2.37 ERA, 2.09 FIP, 2.37 average ERA. Generates a lot of swing and miss. You look at his call plus swing strike percentage at 34%, 4.1% is absolutely nuts. It's a really good quality of contact. If St. Louis falls out of the mix, perhaps he's somebody to look into. Seranthony Dominguez kind of fits the mold for the Dodgers, meaning they typically, especially with the system, get guys that get a lot of swing and miss. You can look at his whip percentage and strikeout percentage are really good. Gives up a decent amount of walks, though. So a little bit in the mold, kind of above Michael Kopech. Got some decent fastball velocity, really overall good stuff. Quality of contact remains really weak for opponents against Seranthony Dominguez. 1 year left and his deal with Baltimore. David Bednar, one of the more popular names you'll probably hear for the Dodgers, going out and targeting. 2 years left of club control with Pittsburgh. This has been a rebound year in his 28 2/3 innings for him. You look at 2.83 ERA, 2.08 FIP, 2.15 SIERA for David Bednar. If you're looking for a closing pitching type of option, he would be one. 35% strikeout percentage. He walks only about 7% of the batters that he faces. Quality of contact really solid. David Bednar has been phenomenal. You have some other names that are part of here. Emilio Pagan. You have Pete Fairbanks, who's going to get a lot of talk. Pete Fairbanks is part of Tampa Bay, which Tampa Bay is going to likely make a run in the American League this year and probably make it to the playoffs based on the way that they're actually playing. But with the way that the Rays operate as a baseball club, they typically at some point will trade players like Pete Fairbanks, although it's a question mark of will they trade him now or will they wait until the offseason to trade a player like him. You have Emilio, he has a 2.03 ERA, does Peter Fairbanks, but you can see some of the strikeouts and walks not necessarily being quite as much there this season, although he certainly has his stuff to be able to succeed. Chris Martin has been one of the most underrated relief pitchers in the game of baseball, pitching for Texas. Really solid ERA on the season for him and some solid numbers overall. Shelby Miller, might be a little bit surprised to see his name on the mix, but he's been phenomenal for Arizona this year. 2.18 ERA. Some of the other numbers are a little bit higher as far as the other ERA estimators, but a 31% or 27.8 strikeout percentage, 31% whiff. He generates chase at 35.5%, which means his called plus swinging strike percentage is at 33%. Just phenomenal stuff for him. It will be a question as far as whether they want to return back to him. I believe 1 year deal for him, so he'd be cheap. Kyle Finnegan, going to be another popular name. Underlying metrics for Kyle Finnegan, maybe not quite as great as the name might suggest. Strikeout percentage of 20, walk percentage of 8, kind of round league average-ish, which is kind of the vibe that you get from looking at Kyle Finnegan's StatCast page. And then you have Scott Barlow as well, as another guy to keep an eye out for. Higher walk percentage, which is keeping some of his numbers down. But if you look at the quality of contact against him this year has been almost non-existent. Really, hitters only getting hard hit percentage at 27% for him. You have some other names. Ryan Helsley, who I think is less likely to be traded because St. Louis and where they are at. A little bit more of a down year for him overall. Dennis Santana for Pittsburgh has, I believe, 2 years of club control left, but he's been phenomenal. Formerly part of the organization. 1.50 ERA, low walk percentage. Paul Sewald, aging veteran, part of Cleveland right now, struggled a little bit, but only with 11 2/3 innings. So and he's rehabbing right now. So if you want to bet on the potential upside and his postseason experience, which I believe came with Arizona a couple years ago, perhaps you can bet on that. There's Sean Armstrong, who's with the Texas Rangers, another low price deal, 1 year, $1.25 million left on his deal, having a lot of success out of the Texas Rangers bullpen, decent strikeout percentage, and you look at the quality of contact, it's decent. Raisel Iglesias for Atlanta, a little bit more of that high upside type of arm, which I don't know if they want to add too many guys to these mix. This is kind of like the role that Alexis Diaz is, but if you wanted to go for Raisel Iglesias for Atlanta, which with his Sierra, with some of the strikeouts minus walk percentage, still remains solid for him. Justin Topa is another arm out of Minnesota, relatively solid. Rafael Montero, another guy that has had some success, formerly a Houston Astro, though. So we'll see what happens with him. Left-handed arms out of the bullpen, one of the guys that I'm kind of keeping my eye out on quite a bit on if they wanted to go down a left-handed bullpen guy. For Minnesota, only 1 year, $3 million deal, 35-year-old Danny Coulombe. I don't know if I'm exactly pronouncing that correct right there. Really good ERA estimators across the board for him. Really solid strikeout minus walk percentage. Generates a lot of chase, even though he doesn't have a ton of velo. And the quality of contact is really, really solid for Danny Coulombe of Minnesota. So keep an eye out for him. He's had a lot of success. Not the highest name that you would keep in mind, but potentially could be somebody that could be available with him being an aging veteran. Gregory Soto, he's as somebody who's watched a lot of Detroit Tigers baseball, there's a lot of growing pains that came through with Gregory Soto. But if you look at the numbers on the season, pitching with Baltimore last year before he's a free agent, doing really well on the season. He's going to be the hardest throwing lefty, not named Aroldis Chapman, who's not, I didn't put on this list, not named Aroldis Chapman, that's going to be available at the trade deadline. Caleb Ferguson of Pittsburgh, former Los Angeles Dodgers, having a really good season. You look at a lot of his numbers are really solid. Hobie Milner from Texas, I believe, has 1 year left on his contract. All these guys have just 1 year left on their deal. Jalen Beeks for Arizona. There's some good metrics that he has with some of the pitch data that I kind of liked for him. Most recent appearance didn't necessarily go well, so the StatCast page doesn't look as good as it did maybe about a week ago. Steven Matz for St. Louis, if you need a little bit more innings pitched out of the bullpen, could be another arm if he became available, if St. Louis started to fall out of contention, which I'm not expecting them to. And then Brent Suter, one of those, if you need innings out of the bullpen, he's not going to generate a lot of swing and miss, a lot of strikeouts, but he knows how to go out there and pitch, and he's proven that time and time again. Could potentially be an option. So what this is just a lot of names that, if you look at years of control, a lot of 1 year deals on the mix, or shorter term type deals, or guys that I kind of dismiss, like Yohan Duran and Griffin Jacks. Dodgers, I'm not anticipating them to go out and trade for a lot of these guys. Here's a couple of things to take note of. Cut back to myself. Again, Dodgers are not going to go out and trade for a lot of these guys, but they do certainly have different options they can turn to if they needed to go and address them at the trade deadline. So an overall evaluation of the Dodgers, which is where we started, the pitching staff has not been necessarily as good as anticipated, and it's because they're decimated with injuries. This entire list is solely dependent on where the state of the Dodgers are at and what the health of the Dodgers pitchers are. If most of the Dodgers come back and they're healthy, I think they have enough, and I think they're going to be more than comfortable, not necessarily to go out and make a lot of moves. Because remember, if you trade for most of these guys aren't going to have minor league options, or you're not really likely to trade for guys that have minor league options and decide to option them down to the minor leagues unless it's a little bit more of a smaller move, in which case you're taking away opportunities from other guys that are part of the mix. We talked about it before the season, and on paper, it looked like the Dodgers had too many guys and not enough roles for some of the younger guys like Ben Casparius and a Jack Schreier to be part of the mix. If you decide to go out and trade for some of these guys, which is probably my expectation, they'll probably go out and trade for 1 or 2 pitchers, perhaps 3 if they need to, but not necessarily a whole lot. If they decide to go out and trade for some guys, they're going to have to replace some of the guys on the current roster. And if guys come back healthy as well, there's going to be a little bit of a roster crunch right in that mix. So we'll have to keep that in mind. In an ideal world, the Dodgers would not have to go out and make many of these trades. And in fact, a lot of these options I would not pursue down if guys come back healthy. I would not pursue any sort of trade for a Chris Sale or Chris Bubich or a Sandy Alcantara if I had a lot of confidence that Tyler Glasnow and Blake Snell were coming back healthy, and you felt confident with the emergence or with the upgrowth of Shohei Ohtani and the upswing that he's going to have with the amount of innings that he's pitching, and then with how good Emmett Sheehan is. If you felt confident with that, you're not going to overpay for any of these guys. You might take a flyer on somebody, but that could potentially have upside, but not necessarily overpay for the ace-level pitcher. So, it's going to be, and we are continued in a little bit of a holding pattern with the Dodgers. I'm not making any sort of prediction as far as what the Dodgers are going to do, nor am I going to create any sort of trade package deals, because I also don't want to give a hand to any of the opponents as far as who I might necessarily want to give up. That might be something for a little bit of a different show. Perhaps when Casey and I are on a show together, we might go a little bit back and forth as far as what exactly the Dodgers could potentially do, especially as we hear more and more rumors going down. But for this list, with what we're seeing with the Los Angeles Dodgers and all of these different arms, there's a lot of different arms that are healthy. But you're also going to have a lot of different teams that are going to be fighting for all of these arms, which means that the price is likely going to increase quite a bit. So then it becomes a hope that your pitchers that are part of the pitching staff are healthy, and if not, don't be afraid to go out there and make a move, because it is all about winning the World Series in 2025 and making this organization as good and as healthy as possible, which doesn't mean trading your entire farm system for a Sandy Alcantara or for potentially to go out there and win this World Series this year. But it means not being afraid to be able to make moves. And the Dodgers are the best at this. There's probably a lot of guys that are not on this list that the organization is very much looking at, and they will probably surprise us this year, just like they surprised us with the trade for a Tommy Edman and a Michael Kopech last year, which turned out the organization knows a lot better than most of us do, because they have the best people working for them as possible. This was just a little bit of an oversight as far as the different potential arms that could be available. Not saying that the Dodgers will trade for any or all of these guys, but I wanted to provide you with some realistic options, as well as the actual success that they've had, breaking it down into ERA estimators, the amount of swing and miss that they generate, and the quality of contact. Because I think that is what you guys deserve, and you guys are the best baseball fans, and you guys can make your own determination. But please, do your own research with this. Don't just take my word for a lot of this stuff. Let's dive into a couple of the comments right here. If you guys have additional thoughts or want me to go over potentially somebody else that I did not consider, I'd be more than happy to be able to do so. But I wanted to go ahead and talk with you guys right now in the comments and see what you guys are saying. Let's see. Alex, thank you very much for joining us. If I had to choose one or the other, I'm taking Bobby Miller, just talking about Walker Buehler versus Bobby Miller. Buehler has 67 innings and 15 home runs last year. 75 innings, 16 home runs. We'll see what happens with those guys. Justin Lamas, there's a reason we traded cash under consideration to get him, so we wouldn't be lesser. Let's continue. Let's be honest. When was the last time the trade deadline was a buyer's market? Always has been a seller's market. Absolutely, which means it's going to be very expensive to go out and get some of the guys. Let's see. Talking both San Diego and San Francisco are in wild card position at the moment. We'll see what happens. Both of them are probably going to be fighting for a wild card spot going forward. Justin Lamas 2021 was supposed to be a seller's market, and Chicago and Washington took advantage of it. Very much so. Let's see. Continuing to go. Let's see if we get to a couple of additional comments. Chuck Huddleston, thank you very much for joining. Busy day, got in late, but certainly will rewatch from the beginning tonight. Hi, guys. Yeah, I very much highly recommend watching this from the beginning and hearing the different arguments that I have. Bob Student 10, would you let Walker start over Yama, Shohei, Snell, Glasnow, or Kirsch in the playoffs, not including Robo or Sheehan? No, I would not let Walker Buehler start over any of those guys during the postseason. Yamamoto, Shohei Ohtani, Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, or any of those guys would not be my first option. It would be one of those, if you needed an additional arm and you wanted to take a little bit of a low-risk type of deal with somebody that you're familiar with, we'll see what happens. Let's see. Craig Osberg, thank you very much for joining us. GI, big fan of Jax, having a bit of a down year with the accounting numbers. Big K numbers could even someday convert to a starter. Probably two end of price with the years control left. Yeah, that's absolutely right with Griffin Jax of Minnesota. He's got too many years of club control. If you're looking at the offseason when he only has 2 years left, and you're talking about making potentially a deal with Minnesota, you can look at it then, but we'll see what happens. Helsley has a dynamic fastball to CNAV. No to Caleb Ferguson. He's having a really good season, but it's with Pittsburgh, so keep that in mind. So we'll see that. CNAV, did I already ask the moderator to hit the like button? Yeah, go ahead and hit that like button if you have not already. Gregory, any news on Snell's return? I haven't heard anything yet. I always, with the injury news, kind of take things slow at first and wait until there's actual movement. Like, for example, I wait until Tyler Glasnow starts his rehab starts before taking anything really for granted. And Blake Snell hasn't started any rehab starts, so we'll wait to see once he starts that. No real news on them. Chuck Huddleston, I like the arms of Sheehan, Robo, and Kasperius over what we would pay for an arm. I do like the arms of them. It becomes a question mark of how much do you actually trust them. And this is what I love about Dodgers Daily's crowd is the immediate instinct for a lot of people is to go out there and make a trade, which isn't always the wisest decision to do out there, is to force some type of trade. I don't want the Dodgers to force their way into some type of trade if they don't believe that that arm is better than what they have in-house. And so it becomes a very serious evaluation. Do you believe that the arm that you are training for, one, is going to help with the depth of what you have and make sure that you have enough arms, but also is going to be better than the arms that you have in-house. And certainly with what Robo showcased yesterday and with his most recent appearances, with Ben Kasperius, with what he's done particularly in the bullpen this season, and with what Emmett Sheehan has showcased recently, there's a lot of reason to be excited, which means that if you're making a 1 month out prediction as far as what the Dodgers are going to do, I'm not saying they're going to do nothing, but I think it's going to be probably relatively quiet this trade deadline, which is very much different from what it has been in the past. I think the organization feels happy with where things are at the major league level and with a lot of the depth that they have, albeit they certainly could use a lot of guys coming back healthy from injury, and certainly injury news over the course of the next month will potentially change that. I think they like how the system is developing, particularly on the outfield across the system is absolutely phenomenal. There are some players that you could potentially talk about, okay, what exactly is the future, and you can look to potentially have some type of trades for them. We'll see what happens. I'm expecting it to be relatively quiet, which is a vast difference from what it is during the offseason. But also, if things don't go right for the Dodgers, do not doubt the organization's willingness to go all in on this team, because they have showcased that they will do whatever they can to put the best roster on the field that they possibly can to go out there and try to win a World Series. Daniel Berry Sports Highlights, thank you very much for joining us, and happy Monday to you. And I think that's going to be it for the show today. Fun show. We got to go through a little bit of the targets. Again, I highly recommend go back and rewatch particularly that section with a lot of the names and understand who maybe some of the realistic potential names are in the different arguments and stuff, as well as I'm curious down in the comment section below, not necessarily in the chat, but particularly in the comments of the actual video, go out there and actually make some sort of trade proposals for you, or not necessarily trade proposals, but who are potentially different arms and stuff that you are curious about potentially the Dodgers going out and looking after. I'm curious to have a little bit of that interaction with you, but that's going to do it for here for Dodgers Dawgs as part of the Dodgers Daily Network. If you have not had the chance to be able to do so, I highly recommend go out and check the interviews that were recently released. There was one released recently with Sean McClain. There was Mark Watkins went out to Rancho Cucamonga to go see the Quakes and got to interview the manager for Rancho Cucamonga, John Shoemaker, legendary coach within the Dodgers organization. Go check that out. Other interviews are out there as well. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'm looking forward to continuing this discussion with you, with Casey, and with everybody here at Dodgers Dawgs. You guys are an absolute blessing to me. Thank you very much for tuning in, and go Dodgers.